إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد, to proceed, فإن خير الكلام كلام الله, then surely the best of speech is the speech of Allah. وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم, the best of guidance is the guidance of Muhammad. وشر الأمور محدثاتها, and the worst of all affairs are those that are newly introduced into the religion. كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Every newly introduced affair in the religion is an innovation, and every innovation is a misguidance, and every misguidance is in the fire of hell. As many of us heard, the topic of tonight's talk is titled A Glimpse into the life of Hafiz ibn Ahmad Al-Hakami, Rahimahullah ta'ala. The title is A Glimpse versus saying something like the biography of. Because to cover the biography of someone like one of our great scholars would require more than a simple talk, a single lecture. Indeed, this could be a topic for a series of lectures. So what we are trying to achieve in this single talk between Maghrib and Isha is to achieve a glimpse, just get an idea of the life of one of the great scholars. As for the choice of this particular alam, this particular mountain of a man, this particular noble Muslim, I chose Sheikh Hafiz Al-Hakami because a number of his students are still alive. They tell from first-hand experience what they have seen. And B, his death is very recent, showing us the potential of our ummah. Because someone may say, if we talk about Al-Imam Al-Bukhari, for example, well, this is in the past. There's no men like that. Women have stopped giving birth to people like that. Someone could say that. So to prevent that particular argument, we are talking about a man whose death is very recent. He died less than 70 years ago. And the third and final reason for choosing Sheikh Hafiz for being the personality of our topic tonight is because he truly have set an astounding example of diligence, perseverance, and showing us what Allah Azza wa Jal can do if He wants to bless someone's life. Talking about people like these is not just entertainment. It's not just for the value of storytelling. Rather, we talk about them in order to derive benefits to bring into our lives. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned the benefit of righteous and goodly stories in the Quran. He said, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Indeed, in their stories there was a ibrah for those of sound mind and contemplation. Ibrah meaning that which leads you from one thing to the next, which serves as a passageway for your mind to reach from one area of knowledge to further areas of knowledge. So these stories are a gain for you. We mention them and we talk about them to remind ourselves who we affiliate to. Who do we affiliate to? We affiliate to the righteous and the pious, and those who have attempted to exemplify Islam in their every breath. We mention them because indeed, in remembering the likes of these people, there is a reminder of how short life is and how unimportant it is when it is compared to the next life. We mention them because it is very sweet to talk about the likes of these men. And in this, the poet said, كَرِّرْ عَلَيَّ حَدِيثَهُمْ يَا حَادِي فَحَدِيثُهُمْ يَجْلُ الْفُؤَادَ الصَّادِي. Repeat upon my ears, O Hadi, their speech, for indeed their speech shines the rusty heart. Meaning, tell me about the pious, tell me about the righteous, O Hadi. And Hadi is the man who sings to the camels when they're traveling at night, so the camels will speed up. They like to hear that. So when they hear that, what happens to the camels? They start to rush. They like to hear the tunes of the sounds of beautiful voices of men singing to them. They start rushing, they start speeding. Sometimes it gets so fast that the rider will become uncomfortable. Slow down. Brother, your voice is too good. Now, so it's as if he is saying that when you talk to me about these kinds of men, you are speeding me up, you are rushing me. You're making me work harder for the sake of Allah. So this is what you want to walk away with from these kinds of topic. فَحَدِيثُهُمْ يَجْلُ الْفُؤَادَ الصَّادِ. For indeed, talking about them will wipe away the rust from the rusty heart. فنسأل الله أن يوفقنا لما قصدنا وأن يبارك فيما جمعنا وأن يتقبل منا ومنكم صالح عملنا. نسأل الله أن يغفر للشيخ وأن يرفع درجته ويعلي منزلته ويجمعنا وإياه بنبينا في الجنة. الشيخ العلامة حافظ ابن أحمد ابن علي الحكمي رحمه الله. He was born on the 24th night of Ramadan in the year 1342 to the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 1342 to the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How many years ago was that? 1342 to the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What year are we in right now? 1440? Huh?
He was born in 1924.
I'm sorry?
He was born in 1924.
No, 1342.
Oh, 101 years.
And what year are we in?
1441.
So that makes him
99.
99 years ago. He was born 99 years ago.
96.
Why?
He's 22.
42. 1342 to the Hijrah. And now it's 1441 to the Hijrah. Right? So according to the lunar calendar, it's going to be 99. If you use the Gregorian calendar, the number will always shrink, right? Yeah. So we're going to use the Hijri calendar for our calculations, but let's also use the Gregorian calendar, because there's a number I'm going to mention later on that we want to understand in terms that are familiar for everybody. It's a very important number. He was born in Ramadan in a village known as As-Salam. Salam means peace, however that's not what is meant. It's actually named after a tree known as the Salam that used to be very plentiful in that area. There's a tree grew in that area called the Salam, so the common folk would call it As-Salam, that particular village. This is southeast of Jazan. So if you know Jazan in Saudi Arabia today, this is southeast of that. And then he moved with his father to the village known as Al-Jadi'. Al-Jadi'. And this is only a few kilometers away from Samita. Samita is very famous because a very large number of scholars are from there. And until today, it is considered a city that is abundantly filled with knowledge and scholars and classes and masajid. And there's a great deal of khair that came from it. This is because his father had a lot of things to tend to in Al-Jadi', like his land, his farmlands, etc. So this is why they moved to Al-Jadi'. And this was when he was very young. Now, back then, a lot of the things that we take for granted today were not present. So if you want to understand the context, you have to think about a time when maybe a car would have been something they have never even heard about. A cell phone was not even imagined, maybe. So when you hear the distances that might be mentioned in some of this talk, think about that. If you hear that we are going to mention, for example, 6 miles, don't think 6 miles or 5 minutes by car. La. 6 miles is 6 miles on foot or on donkey. He was raised upon righteousness in a family that was simple, humble, and righteous. He and his older brother were both raised in a very humble and righteous way. And his main task from a very young age was tending to his father's flock of sheep. So his job was what? A shepherd. And perhaps this is an indication of great things to come in his future, because there's a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا مِن نَبِيٍّ إِلَّا وَرَعَ الْغَنَمِ. There's not a single prophet except that he shepherded sheep. It is as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from a very young age prepared him just like the inheritors of the prophets are to be prepared. At a very young age, his father enrolled his older brother Muhammad in what is known as Al-Kuttab. What is that? Huh? What do you call it in Africa? those schools that they send the kids to learn the Quran, for example. They have a name for them, right? Aywa. Everybody heard? Huh? So his father sent his older brother to learn, but they were not able to dedicate him just for that. So he would go and he would come back. So Muhammad, the older brother of a Shaykh Hafiz, the teacher gave him the alphabet. He memorized it in the first day. And not only so, he learned how to write it in the first day. Within a few days, he could read and write. And when he started memorizing, while other kids would memorize a surah, maybe 2, he would memorize 10 in a single day. Who are we talking about? Muhammad ibn Ahmad Al-Hakami, a major scholar in his own right. And he died very recently. He died in the year approximately 2004, the Gregorian calendar. He lived a long life. May Allah have mercy upon him. The way Muhammad learned was not superficial. He would learn deeply and understand the material thoroughly, to the point that when he came back home, he would teach Hafiz. He said, describing the experience of teaching Hafiz, I found him far more intelligent than I imagined. He was so intelligent that when he taught him something, he would learn it. He said it took him 1 week from the beginning of me teaching him to read and write to be able to read from the Quran on his own. From the moment they started to the moment that he could read from the Quran on his own, it was how much? 7 days. That is amazing. And once they learned to read and write, they began memorizing from the book of Allah Azza wa Jal with the Shaykh, and also reading from it. Before the age of 7, the Shaykh Hafiz Al-Hakami had read the Quran from cover to cover, from Al-Baqarah to An-Nas, without a mistake. Reading. And they also memorized, if I remember correctly, approximately to At-Tahrim, Surah At-Tahrim. It's a little bit more than 2 juz. And reading became a love of their lives. So much so that when they heard that there's a scholar in a nearby area, I would say maybe about 4 miles away, in a village. The villages are very tiny. Today, 4 miles is not even what? A county in one of our cities, right? But for them, this will be the distance between 2 villages. Tiny, small villages. Simple people, simple life. They heard of this sheikh who was proficient in the science known as Al-Fara'id. What is Al-Fara'id in English? In the inheritance. And he had a copy of Al-Rahabiyya. So Muhammad traveled to him. The older brother, he traveled to him, and he said that he wants to borrow it and return it. So he came back to his brother Hafiz with the borrowed copy of Al-Rahabiyya, and they copied it word for word and memorized it and returned it to the Shaykh. Then they heard of another scholar who had Kashf al-Shubuhat and Thalathat al-Usul in another area. So he traveled to him and he asked to borrow that book. So they obtained that copy, copied it and memorized it and returned it. They continued in this way. Whatever they could get their hands on, they would get it copy it, return it. All of this before the age of 7. Shaykh Hafiz had memorized Al-Rahabiyya, Kashf Al-Shubuhat, Thalathat Al-Usul. They found a copy of Lamiyat Al-Af'al, and Hafiz Al-Hakami decided he wants to memorize it before the age of 7. Why? Because the other shepherds of sheep, they used to have a game, a word game that they play. One would say a word and someone would try to bring a word that rhymes with it, and so on and so forth. And they always used to beat him because he was very young. So he decided, when he saw that Lamiyya, that poem by Ibn Malik, that this is going to allow him to win that game. So he memorized it, and then he used to read from it to the other shepherds, and they would just be bewildered, looking at him like they don't know how to answer. So he started winning in that game. And he does not understand what it means and what knowledge it contains. He's less than 7 years old. Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, he used to have a saying that he used to love to repeat. He would say, إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ شَيْئًا هَيَّأَ أَسْبَابَهُ. If Allah wants for something to happen, He will make the reasons that lead to its fruition come together. It's as if Allah Azza wa Jal was putting the reasons together and making them come together to lead to the fruition of what that man will become in the future. So this continued until a very fortunate event happened. Now, before I mention this event, I want to also give a little context. They were not rich people. This is why their parents would use them for jobs like tending to the sheep. This was their income, this was their livelihood. So because of that, they were not able to just send them to school and go study the knowledge, become knowledgeable. Also, there were no trustworthy scholars in the area. The fact that there were no trustworthy scholars in the area is also something that plays into this story. It is because of this reason that there were no trustworthy scholars in this area that ignorance became very widespread in that area. Ignorance was the norm. People were extremely astray. And then a well-known scholar from the great scholars of that era, Al-Imam Al-Shaykh Al-Allama Abdullah Al-Qar'awi rahimahullah ta'ala, he saw a dream. And he interpreted that dream to mean that he should go to Samita, to spread the da'wah and call to Allah. So he told his dream to the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Shaykh, may Allah have mercy upon him, who used to be the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia. So the Shaykh encouraged him to go and do that and help those people. They need help. So Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi traveled to Samita, which is only like 6 miles, 4 miles away from Al-Jadir. But both Muhammad and his brother Ahmad did not know, and his brother Hafiz did not know about Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi. And then a very fortunate event happened. They heard of a scholar who came from Yemen and settled down in those areas, who had a copy of Majmu' Rasail Mashayikh Al-Da'wah Al-Najdiyah, a very, very precious compilation of books on Aqeedah. So Muhammad went, guess why? To borrow the book. So he went to the Shaykh, he spoke to him. So the Shaykh explained to him, if you want books, there is a big scholar in Samita who has a library with him. So Muhammad came back with more than just a copy of Al-Majmu' so that they can copy it. He came back with the information that there is a major scholar in Samita, Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi. Meanwhile, we have Hafiz, who is 7 years old, right? Or about. Who learned to read and write and memorize so many things and was clearly extremely intelligent and talented. He was working on beautifying his handwriting on his own, to the point that from a very young age his handwriting was extremely beautiful to behold. So he told his brother Muhammad to take a message from him and go to visit Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi and borrow Kitab Al-Tawheed. So he wrote a message, a letter to Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi, described by the scholars as a beautiful invitation to Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi to come to Al-Jadi' to deliver a lesson. Come give us a lecture. Along with an invitation, it's also a request for the book. And when he finished writing his letter and he made it beautiful and nice and beautiful handwriting, and he picked his words, little child. Then he decided he's going to make some poetry. He's going to do what? Make some poetry and put it on the cover. So he wrote 2 lines of poetry. And he said, إن الذي رقم الكتاب بكفه يقرأ السلام على الذي يقراه وعلى الذي يقراه ألف تحية مقرونة بالمسك حين يراه. For those of us who have a taste for the Arabic poetry, you can see the different types of poetic beauty that he included in these 2 simple lines. How he's using words that rhyme, words that have similar letters, and he's repeating words that that can have 2 meanings. So he uses the same word for one meaning in one area, and then he uses the same word for the other meaning in the other area. It's a very big feat, very big accomplishment for someone of that age. The meaning, the translation of these 2 lines. إن الذي رقم الكتاب بكفه عليكم السلام ورحمة الله. Indeed, the one who wrote this written message with his hand, يقرأ السلام على الذي يقراه, is reciting the salam, the greeting of Islam, upon the man who reads it. وعلى الذي يقراه ألف تحية, and the one who reads it, may 1,000 greetings be upon him. مقرونة بالمسك حين يراه, combined with the smell of misk when he sees it. Shaykh Muhammad traveled, went to Shaykh Abdullah, gave him the letter, spoke to him, so on and so forth. This was what? In the morning. So the Shaykh started reading the letter on the way to the masjid, going to Salat al-Dhuhr. So he asked him, who is this? He said, my brother. He's younger than me. He's younger than you. What does he work? He said, he's a shepherd. Yara al-Ghanam. Shaykh is reading it and trying to understand what was being said to him. When he led the salah, he spoke to his students and he read the letter to them. And then he said, this from a shepherd? This is the speech of a shepherd? He kept saying this to his students and wondering, amazed. This is the speech of a shepherd? And then he announced, we're going to visit tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to Al-Jadi'. And he promised to come and deliver a lecture. When the Shaykh arrived, the next day, he was hosted by the Shaykh of the village. And his students came with him, and it was a beautiful gathering. And then the Shaykh gave a lecture after Salat al-Maghrib, talked about At-Tawheed and its importance, talked about As-Salah and its importance. People benefited. And then Hafiz came. May Allah have mercy upon all of them. Afterwards, because he was busy with what? His flock. His family needed him to tend to those sheep. So when he came, he finally met the Shaykh. And this was the beginning of a lifelong friendship, a brotherhood, and a student relation with his teacher. Later on, they were described like a soul and a body. Hafiz and his Shaykh, Hisham Abouzeid, like Hafiz was the soul to his Shaykh, and that he would never go against him in whatever he requested. The love between them grew extremely deep, and the connection between them was truly something to ponder over and be amazed with. We shall see more examples. But one of the first things that the Shaykh wanted to know is his recitation of the Quran. So he asked the young child to recite from the Book of Allah. So Hafiz Al-Hakami began reciting from what he knows. His recitation was powerful, moving, and precise, without mistakes. Very beautiful recitation. Coming from a child his age, it was truly something to behold, something amazing. Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qara'awi started crying from what he heard. And then he took a Shaykh Muhammad by his hand, and he took a Shaykh Hafiz by his hand. He made one sit to his right, and he made one sit to his left, and he started talking to them and asking them questions about the Quran, asking them questions about Tawheed, asking them questions about Aqidah. And they were answering like an arrow heading to its target, without any hesitation. He was amazed. Shaykh Abdullah was so amazed that he announced, "We're going to spend the night." This was Thursday night. Muhammad visited Wednesday. The Shaykh came to Al-Jadi' Thursday night. Tomorrow's Jum'ah. They spent the night, and the Shaykh gave the khutbah the next day in Al-Jadi'. And then the Shaykh announced, the Salafi school of Samita is moving to Al-Jadi'. Starting tomorrow, Saturday, we're going to have classes. So the Shaykh began teaching in Al-Jadi' and is moving his school from Samit. And for 20 days, a Shaykh Hafiz would go to him in the morning, then go to his flock, then come back to him during the break, midday, and then go back to his flock, and then come back to him at night. 3 periods. He was hungry and thirsty for knowledge, that young child. 3 times a day, whenever there was a chance, he was going to the Shaykh. He finished the explanation of Al-Rahabiyya, the explanation of the 40 ahadith of Al-Imam Al-Nawawi, even Bulugh Al-Maram, 1,000 hadith in fiqh, in 20 days. That's how much he was eager and zealous. It may sound like something you cannot believe, right? But the scholars have done even more than that. Some of the scholars finished Sahih al-Bukhari in 3 days. So don't think that Bulugh al-Maram in 20 days is impossible. La, a lot more can be done. But what is amazing is that it is from a child who is a shepherd of sheep, and his family is not even dedicating him to knowledge. Meanwhile, the students of Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qara'awi, his big students, were very accomplished students of knowledge, very proficient. They were traveling back and forth from Samita to Al-Jadi'. They had not moved. And this became difficult. So they started complaining to the Shaykh and saying the school has to go back to Samita, etc., etc., etc. So Muhammad and his brother Hafiz realized that they had caused undue difficulty for the Shaykh. The Shaykh was amazed by them, and his love for them was great and growing by the minute. But at the same time, his other students who were already with him, already studying, they had a right upon the Shaykh. So the Shaykh became torn. When they saw this, look at their manners. They said to the Shaykh, Shaykh, you should move back and we're going to come and study with you. So when they said that and they promised the Shaykh they're going to come and study with him, the Shaykh felt better and he moved back to Samita and they started attending. Hafiz was not able to attend all the time. His family was not able to let go of him. Shaykh Abdullah al-Qara'awi, recognizing the opportunity that was in front of him, he offered the family an offer. He said to them, I want you to dedicate him to knowledge. Let him come and learn. His job to shepherd your sheep, I can take care of it. I'm going to hire someone to shepherd your sheep for you. Yani this is a waste of time for someone like Hafiz. This man is what? This is a very rare person. You need to invest him. This is for the ummah. He cannot be wasted. But his family refused. Number one, because he was very young and they were attached to him. And number two, they needed him and they were afraid for him, and so on and so forth. There were reasons. The point is they rejected the offer. So he did his best in going and coming from visiting the Shaykh and coming back and so on and so forth. He attended, but his attendance was not perfect. And then the days went and came, and finally his mother, may Allah have mercy upon her, passed away. When she did, soon thereafter his father agreed to let him travel to knowledge. When the permission came, Shaykh Hafiz moved to Samita and joined the school officially full-time. It was there that he found the library of the Shaykh, and he was able to join the classes and begin memorizing in a serious fashion. Shaykh Muhammad, his older brother, he said, the first day I memorized a thumun. Those of you who are memorizing the Quran, how much is a thumun? Huh? Around 3 pages? Thumun. Or 4 pages, huh? 8 pages? No. Around 2 pages, 2.5 pages. Shaykh Muhammad memorized that in a day. He said Hafiz, meanwhile, memorized a juzu. The second day, Shaykh Muhammad memorized another thumun. Shaykh Hafiz memorized another juzu. The third day, he memorized another thumun, and Hafiz memorized another juzu. He said, I'm not keeping up with you no more. I'm done. I'm just going to do me. You do whatever. It's too hard. In fact, in that Ramadan, a Shaykh Hafiz would memorize a juzu a day and lead the Taraweeh at night. And by the end of Ramadan, he finished memorizing the Book of Allah. He turned to the books and he started reading. He listened to the classes of his Shaykh and his teacher. He memorized so many things and read so many books. To give you a sample of what he read, he read Fath al-Bari, the explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari cover to cover. He read Sharh al-Aini al-Bukhari cover to cover. He read Sharh Muslim lin-Nawawi cover to cover. These are books, when we talk about them, I want you to understand it's not this. These are books like that. cover to cover doesn't mean volume 1 cover to cover. It means from volume 1 to volume 15 cover to cover. The scholars who described his reading, they said he read with seriousness. In other words, he read with his eyes open, taking notes, making comments, highlighting things, summarizing entire sections for later use. He benefited from what he read. He read entire books of the Sunnah, Sahih al-Bukhari cover to cover, Sahih Muslim, the Sunan, etc. He read Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, a book of history, multi-volume book of history written by Ibn Kathir, Rahimahullah, cover to cover, word for word, and he started sharing parts of it in classes for his co-students. He would pick major historical events and he would read them to them. He was an ayah from the ayat of Allah. One time, Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qara'awi, very early on, read Tuhfatul Atfal to the students to explain it to them. Hafiz memorized it from that one hearing. Everyone present was amazed. It's a small poem in Tajweed, considered an introduction to the science of Tajweed, the correct recitation of the Quran. Most people would memorize it in maybe a month or something, 2 weeks, if you are doing fast. Someone who has nothing else to do, maybe a week, 3 days. He heard it once and he memorized it from that one time. By the age of approximately 19 years old, his shaykh and his teacher said to him, "We want to know how much you have benefited." He was attending the shaykh's classes and books were being read and things were being explained. He went from one science and discipline to the other. After he finished a lot of that hadith stuff, he went to An-Nahu, he memorized Al-Ajrumiyya and got its explanation. Went to Al-Alfiyya, memorized it. After he finished memorizing it, he started adding things to it that were missing from it. And then he commented on some of its lines and tried to fix them because of certain issues that were in them. Then he went to Qatra al-Nada and went to its explanation. All of this at a very young age. By the time he was 19, the Shaykh posed this question. He said, "We want to know how much you have benefited." And from a very young age, he had a propensity for poetry, that he could quickly put words into verse. So the Shaykh said, "Share with us your knowledge in Aqeedah in the form of a poem." How old is he? 19. So he wrote the famous poem known as Sullam al-Wusul ila ilm al-usul, a poem that has included pretty much all the main topics of Aqeedah. Nothing from the main topics of Aqeedah is missing. Comprehensive. When the scholars saw it, they were overjoyed and extremely pleased. Before the age of 20, he was done. Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qara'awi then requested that he explain it. In 2 years he finished. In a 3-volume treatise titled Ma'arijul Qabul. Both of them, the poem and Ma'arij al-Qabul, written by this young man who's not even 25, until today are considered an advanced level study in Aqeedah. So to get to that point, you have to study a number of things before you get to that. And the scholars until today use them to teach the students. And insha'Allah, until the day of judgment, they're going to remain beneficial. To give you an idea of how beneficial that book is, when Muhibb al-Din al-Khatib rahimahullah ta'ala, the great scholar, saw a copy of Ma'arij al-Qabul, he said, if I had not seen the name of the author on the cover, I would have said this is from the books of the predecessors, those who have passed away a long time ago from the scholars of old. Yani he felt like he was reading a book written in the time of Imam Ahmad, or in the time of Ad-Darimi, or in the time of Al-Bukhari. But he sees the name of the author right there on the cover. So he said, if it was not for that, I would think I'm reading a book written by one of the predecessors. The Shaykh accomplished such a feat in that book that he would include in the poem not just the issue he's explaining in Aqidah, but the reference to it as well, which hadith and where the hadith is found. This is a feat. Something that is very rare to come from a man in our times. His zeal for knowledge seemed insatiable. And had it not been for his Shaykh requesting that he author, he would have probably not authored anything, just continued to learn. To show you an example of how much he loved knowledge, one time his Shaykh took him and his brother and they visited Shaykh Muhammad Abdurrazzaq Hamza rahimahullah ta'ala, who was in charge, if I remember correctly, at the time of the library of the Holy Mosque in Mecca, Haram al-Makki. So they visited the Shaykh and they sat, they talked. A package came from Egypt. It was just delivered that day, or just delivered recently, and the Shaykh opened it that day. So Shaykh Muhammad Razzaq opened his package, and inside it were 2 copies of a book that previously was never printed. It was only found in manuscript form, written by Imam Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, titled Khalqu Af'al al-Ibad, the creation of the actions of the slaves. It's a book of Aqidah written in the style of Ahadith. So the Shaykh mentioned what was in the package. Shaykh Muhammad Abdurrazzaq Hamza mentioned what was in the package. When Hafiz Al-Hakami heard the name of the book, and he had never seen it before but only heard of it, and he was yearning for it, when he heard the name of the book, his brother Muhammad, he's telling the story, he was there with them, he said Hafiz went like this when he heard Khalq Af'al al-Ibad. That's how much he was craving that book. When they were leaving, he said to Shaykh Muhammad, I would like to borrow the book for a day. Tomorrow when we come back, I'll bring it with me. They had an appointment to visit the Shaykh again the next day. So the Shaykh gave him the book. On the way to Al-Masjid Al-Haram, to the Haram, to the Kaaba, he bought some paper and whatever he needed. And after they prayed Isha, his brother Muhammad prayed the Sunnah and said to him, wake me up. He said he made his ghutra into a pillow and he got some sleep. And Hafiz started writing, copying the book. With the adhan of Fajr, he was writing وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ وَسَلَّمَ عَلَى نَبِيِّنَا Muhammad, the end of the book. The first adhan, the adhan that's for suhoor and waking up and finishing your night prayers. So he went to wake up his brother so that he can pray the witr, and Hafiz went and made tawaf, and they prayed Fajr, so on. And then later on they went back to Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Razzaq Hamza. So when they got back, he gave the Sheikh back the book. It was borrowed. So the Sheikh said to him, MashaAllah, you read it? So Sheikh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi spoke up. He said, no, he copied it. And if you want to say he memorized it, you can. So Shaykh Muhammad Razak opened the book, started reading. So he would read something to him, and he would ask him. Shaykh Hafiz would tell him the chain of narrators and the hadith. Then he would open another part. He would read to him. So the Shaykh would tell him the chain of narrators and the hadith. He did that so many times, and it became clear that he had memorized the book. He skipped on a night's sleep for what? For knowledge. Shaykh Abouzeid gave him the book. He said, the book is a gift. He said to him, the book is a gift. You keep the book and you keep what you wrote. The Shaykh, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, in the life of his Shaykh, Shaykh Abdullah Al-Qar'awi, became pretty much the right hand of his Shaykh. So he started teaching, and he started taking responsibilities, and he started taking positions, and he started spreading his da'wah while his Shaykh was alive. Meanwhile, the relationship between them grew to more than just the relationship between a Shaykh and his student. His Shaykh decided to marry him his daughter. So he became what? His father-in-law. Married to his daughter and his student. SubhanAllah, time goes very quickly, and we are just in the beginning. So maybe I can mention something funny while we're on the topic of marriage. Later on, the Shaykh decided this man needs a second wife. So he found him a second wife. Normally the father of the wife is the last person to what? To be involved in anything like this. But in this case, it was the Shaykh who got him married again. Then later on, the Shaykh decided this man needs a third wife. So he got him the third wife. This is how much he loved him. His own daughter is what? Secondary. Shaykh is first. Shaykh Hafiz comes first. Hafiz Al-Hakami wrote a poem known famously as Al-Mimiyya, in which he talked about knowledge. I would like to share with the brothers some of the lines mentioned in that poem. To show you what his opinion on knowledge was. He said, العلم أغلى وأحلى ما له استمعت أذن وأعرض عنه ناطق بفم. العلم غايته القصوى ورتبته العلياء فاسعوا إليه يا أولي الهمم. العلم أشرف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرم من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادة والجهال في الظلم. العلم أعلى حياة للعباد كما أهل الجهالة أموات بجهلهم. Knowledge is the sweetest and most precious thing that any ear has ever heard or any mouth has ever spoken. Knowledge, it leads to the highest rank and the loftiest station of all. So seek it, O you who have determination. Knowledge is the loftiest goal, and the one who seeks it is the most noble person on 2 feet that walks the face of the earth with Allah. Knowledge is a clear light that the people of happiness, or another translation, the people of Jannah, use it to see the way, while the ignorant are in darkness. Knowledge is the highest form of life, just like the people of ignorance are dead in their ignorance. Later on in the same poem he says, and I want to share one more line, وَاجْهَدْ بِعَزْمٍ قَوِيٍّ لَنْ ثِنَاءَ لَهُ. Actually, let me go 2 more lines if you allow me. يا طالب العلم لا تبغي به بدلا فقد ظفرت ورب اللوح والقلم وقدس العلم واعرف قدر حرمته في القول والفعل والآداب فالتزم. Then he said واجهد بعزم قوي لا انثناء له لو يعلم المرء قدر العلم لم ينم. He said, O seeker of knowledge, never ever seek something else instead, for indeed you have reached victory. I swear by the Lord of the tablet and the pen. He said, and hold the knowledge sacred and recognize its status, both in your speech, in your actions, and hold on to the proper manners. Then he said, and this is the line I wanted to highlight, and strive with determination that is unbreakable. If a man recognized the true value of knowledge, he would never sleep. I wanted to mention this line specifically because maybe some of us, when we read something like this, we will say this is what? Poetic exaggeration. If a man knew the true worth of knowledge, he would not sleep. Some of us would think this is what? Poetic exaggeration. Poetry has exaggeration. For the beauty of the word in the sentence, you would say something exaggerated, but you don't mean it. But we have seen from the life of the Shaykh that this was actually what? A reality. If a man knew the true worth of knowledge, he would not sleep. Al-Imam Al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, he would wake up at night. Not once, not twice, not 5, not 10 times. He would wake up more than that in one night to turn on the lantern, not the switch, the lantern, and write down some knowledge and go back to bed. And he would do that over and over and over and over and over all night long until Fajr. If we understood knowledge, then we would understand the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he said, مَنْ هُمَانِ لَا يَشْبَعَانِ. And he mentioned one of them is طَالِبُ عِلْمٍ. There are 2 people that are hungry and their hunger will never be satiated. And he mentioned one of them is the seeker of knowledge. No matter how much knowledge he gains, he will never find enough. Who is the other one? The seeker of the dunya. No matter how much dunya he gets, he's never going to feel like he has enough. We will stop here for the adhan. Wallahu a'lam. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. أما بعد، Shaykh Hafiz rahimahullah ta'ala was clearly seen as a man of great potential by his Shaykh Hisham Abouzeid. So very early on, Shaykh Abouzeid started to use him for the da'wah. So he would make him teach the other students in the school. He would make him handle jobs related to the da'wah. And then finally, in the year 1363, the Shaykh appointed him as the headmaster of the Salafi school of Samta. Now, in 1363, how old was the Shaykh? Huh? He was born, 1363 is the year he was appointed. He was born, 21. Ahsant, Jazakallah khair. Because he was born in 1342. He was 21 years old and he was already the headmaster of the school. And then the Shaykh also appointed him to be a supervisor for nearby schools, as the Shaykh kept on opening schools for knowledge in nearby areas. So he appointed him as a supervisor for all these different schools. And the Shaykh appointed some others from his students to teach in them. Shaykh Hafiz would help his Shaykh as he made the rounds to visit the different schools and go see what's going on and check on the affairs and so on and so forth. So he was traveling frequently. In fact, he bought a donkey for these trips. He purchased a donkey for some of these trips. And he kept on traveling and helping his Shaykh and taking the positions the Shaykh wanted him to take and so on and so forth, until he got to the point that he became a reference for the people. So people would come, students of knowledge would come, and they would sit and they would learn and they would walk away with tremendous benefit from his classes and his lectures. He was a role model in his manners, in his conduct, in practicing what he preached. His brother Shaykh Muhammad said about him, he used to be, may Allah have mercy upon him, upon a great amount of piety, fear of Allah, and chastity. His iman was strong and solid. His adherence to the sunnah was severe. He was one to speak the truth at any cost. He would command people and enjoin upon them the good, and he himself would do it, and forbid them from the evil, and he himself would leave it. And he was from those الَّذِينَ لَا تَأْخُذُهُمْ فِي اللَّهِ لَوْمَةُ لَائِمٍ, from those who cared not about the blame of the blamers when it came to the affair of Allah. His gatherings were always gatherings of knowledge and benefit. He himself was short, well-built, squared, and extremely energetic, full of energy and zeal. His character was described as spirited and light. Anyone who sat with him would never get bored from sitting with him. His company was enjoyable. He used to joke a lot and make people laugh. He was very humble. One time someone praised him on the spot. He made a poem in which he explained the harms of praise and that he has no interest in it, and why praise contradicts the correct aqeedah. And that poem is worth studying for a student of knowledge. It teaches you sincerity. And taught the man instead what to do when you love a brother for the sake of Allah. So he gave him the right approach and he forbade him from the wrong approach. All in a very beautiful and easy to memorize poem, filled with knowledge. He kept on benefiting the people, and the hearts became very attached to him. People loved him far and wide. His reputation was stellar. He became well known in circles of knowledge far and wide. While he was alive, his books were already in print. And he remained the headmaster of the school of Samita all the way until the Hajj of 1377. The Shaykh went to the Hajj, and by then the school was no longer known as the Salafi school. It became al-Ma'had al-Ilmi, and so on and so forth. Many developments had happened. He went to the Hajj, and after he finished the Hajj, he became ill. He fell sick, and soon thereafter he passed away. May Allah have mercy upon him, and may Allah raise his rank among the Siddiqeen, the Shuhada, and the Salihin. وحسن أولئك رفيقا. نسأل الله أن يلحقنا جميعا بهم مع الشيخ. In the year 1377, the Shaykh would be how many years old? 35 years old. He lived for only 35 Gregorian years? No, Hijri years, right? طيب. So what is that in Gregorian years? It will be less, right? It will be anywhere from maybe 32, 33, something like that. What did he accomplish in that short life? We already have an idea how much he accomplished in terms of how much knowledge he gained, right? But now look at how much knowledge he left behind. He wrote Sulam al-Wusul and its explanation, Ma'arij al-Qabul. He wrote أعلام السنة المنشورة لاعتقاد الطائفة الناجية المنصورة, a book of Aqidah composed as questions and their answers, about 200 of them. He wrote دليل أرباب الفلاح, a book in the sciences of Hadith, Mustalah. He wrote اللؤلؤ المكنون في أحوال الأسانيد والمتون as a poem. He wrote السبل السوية لفقه السنن المروية, a very long poem, if I remember correctly, somewhere upwards of 3,000 verses, containing the fiqh. One of the scholars explained it in a multi-volume book. One of his students, actually. He wrote وسيلة الحصول إلى مهمات الأصول, a poem in أصول الفقه. He wrote a لامية titled لامية المنسوخ, the lamiyah of the abrogated, to teach the student what is abrogated from the rulings and texts of Islam and what is the abrogated. He wrote a book in Al-Fara'id, the rules of inheritance, called An-Nur al-Fa'id min al-Shams al-Wahyi fi ilm al-Fara'id. He wrote in history and the prophetic biography of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, a poem titled نيل السول من تاريخ الأمم وسيرة الرسول. He wrote نصيحة الإخوان المشهورة بالقاتية. A question was answered in it about the ruling regarding al-qat, very harmful substance, addictive, that people used very prominently back then. He wrote Al-Mimiyya, we already referred to it, in Al-Adab Al-Wasaya Al-Ilmiyya, a poem of tremendous benefit for everyone that wants to become serious with regards to knowledge, along with many, many other books. This is just a sample. He died before the age of 35 in the Gregorian calendar. Many of us are older than that, and yet he left behind a library. He left behind a fortune of knowledge for the Ummah to continue to benefit from. All that reward, insha'Allah, is going to him while he is now in his grave. All the hundreds of thousands of people that have benefited from his knowledge from that time until today, all that reward, we count upon Allah to give it to him. And furthermore, until the Day of Judgment. I say this to highlight a fact that no matter how little something is, how small it is, how short it is, if Allah wants to make it blessed, Allah will make it blessed. If Allah wants to turn a very short life into a life that is supremely productive, to the point that if someone else lived 200 years, he may not achieve the same, Allah can. Why do I say this? I say this because the next time we turn to Allah with dua, the next time we turn to Allah with relying upon Him, we need to understand we are relying upon and calling upon the one who can do what He wants. And that if Allah wants to make you have a blessed life, He can. If Allah wants to make you a source of guidance for others, He can. If Allah wants to give you knowledge, He can. So never ever think that this is beyond what Allah can give. Rather trust that you are asking the one who loves to be asked. Jalla wa ala. نسأل الله أن يغفر للشيخ وأن يرحمه وأن يرفع منزلته. We ask Allah to allow us to gather with him in Jannah with our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وأشكركم على حسن الاستماع. I am grateful to you all for your attendance and listening, and I ask Allah to make these gatherings beneficial for us on the day we meet Him, sincerely for His sake. Allahu a'lam. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu